please stand for the prayer and pledge of allegiance. Our
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Good evening, everybody. We will move to item D, approval of minutes. In the absence of any objections or corrections, the minutes shall stand approved from the July 3rd, 2023 special council meeting. I'm hearing none. They will stand approved. Item E, citizen communication. If there's anyone in the audience or online that would like to comment or ask a question, feel free to do so at this point in time. We'll gladly review those messages during the council meeting as well. Item F, reports from council committees. F1, the electric committee did not meet on July 10th, 2023 due to lack of agenda items. The water, sewer, refuse, recycling, and litter committee did not meet on July 10th, 2023 due to lack of agenda items. The municipal properties, building, land use, and economic development committee did not meet on July 10th due to lack of agenda items. And the Parks and Rec committee did not meet today due to lack of agenda items. Item H1, resolution number 03223, a resolution authorizing a community reinvestment area agreement with Shank Properties LLC within Napoleon CRA number 7 and declaring an emergency. Do we have a motion?
A motion.
Second.
Thank you. All right, Andy.
Yes, Councilman Durham. As we discussed at length the last council meeting, that this would be brought forth, but Billy checked and was advised by other legal counsel that we certainly could offer the CRA in a TIF district. With that said, I will allow Jen to speak with this about this further if you have any questions. Otherwise, there's nothing new other than what we discussed at the last meeting.
Any questions?
I have quite a few questions.
All right.
I don't know if their answers can be attained tonight, but I'd like to just go through a few of them quickly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
May or may not be for you, but you may or may know some of the answers. Kevin Garinger said something about $1.1 million of infrastructure and payments that are due. What are those $1.1 million of infrastructure specifically?
We reconstructed American Road from the Love's Truck Stop down the length westward to Oakwood Avenue. That was not built to the standards for which we were really required for heavier trucks.
Okay.
The infrastructure was in place and was adequate for development out in that area. But the road itself had to be rebuilt. And we also came around the corner, and I know you all were here during this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it came down around Oakwood as well.
Right.
Down to Freedom Drive.
Right.
So that
particular
corridor.
That particular project then was $1.1 million.
That's correct. That was all of the,
So it was all road.
right, right.
And storm sewer,
Oh, there was some storm?
drainage.
Okay. Thank you.
But nothing on Freedom where this particular CRA.
I believe so.
Just the intersection itself.
And at the time that was financed, that was, I don't know how.
It was financed, the city financed it ourselves, borrowing from ourselves in the electric department.
I remember those
Yeah, correct.
meetings because I listened to them.
Yeah.
So we borrowed the money.
From ourselves.
From ourselves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And are paying it back to ourselves.
Right, yeah,
I believe it's 2.5%, but we are paying it back to ourselves.
yeah.
For 30 years,
Over 30 years.
yes.
How was that debt then to be serviced? Was it specifically considered that the TIF was going to service that debt?
That's the idea behind the TIF, that's correct, yeah. You're looking for enough economic development in there, and you build the road to the standard to encourage additional economic development in that area. By improving that road, now we can allow bigger truck traffic on there, without having to kind of piecemeal it down the road. Because we could have piecemealed basically to where Love's is, and then if you have another big thing, then you gotta piecemeal it again. And the decision's made just to go all the way around the block.
Look, and the county GIS maps must be old because it looks like the newest part's just in front of Love's. It doesn't show farther on down, so when I'm looking at the maps, it doesn't look like any improvement was made to the west.
If you drive it, you see it.
Yeah,
I believe part of that might be because what's in front of Love's is concrete.
Yes.
Is concrete. So that was obviously built to a different standard than what the rest of the road was. But that might be what you're seeing on the maps.
Where was this $500,000 trigger for the TIF? Where does that come in? What is that? What does that mean? Because in my research of TIFs, it's typically before the TIF, you take whatever the property value, or whatever the property value was on its face, freeze it, and then any new improvements, the increased taxes go to the TIF. But here, there's a $500,000 thing here. I'm not understanding that.
Yes. I think that was written into the legislation, if I'm not mistaken, the $500,000.
So instead of freezing the property values, we just said an improvement had to be over 500,000?
That's correct.
Valuation of the improvement.
Jen, will you do us a favor? Will you talk into the microphone, please? I hate to make you stand up, but if you could do that, that way we can make sure we can hear it. Thank you very much.
So 500,000 is the valuation of improvements. The amount of improvements could be higher, obviously. It would just be the calculation, if that makes sense. It would have to equal.
The taxable valuation.
Correct.
The taxable value.
Correct.
Which is probably
Which right now, Love's is the only parcel out there that is high enough to trigger into the TIF.
What year was that TIF created?
I believe it's 2020.
Yeah.
So that probably didn't even consider or encompass the inflation that we saw after that.
No,
We never thought of it at the time.
no. That was probably close to the going rate though for debt. I know Chad got some stuff cheaper than that through the state, but
At the time.
at the time.
At the time.
yeah, yeah.
But again, like I say, that does not encompass
Right.
the massive inflation now
No,
that
right,
has taken place.
right.
So for Love's, who has triggered and is there, what happens if that property value decreases? What happens if that evaluation decreases? Does it fall out at some point, or is it always going to be there?
I don't believe it falls out. Obviously, the taxes
The amount
would be
less.
reduced. That's
Always
correct.
be in there for the, and how many years was that again? I forgot to ask that question. How many years was the TIF for?
It's 30.
30.
30 years.
Same as the debt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Since you're standing there, in your opinion, does a TIF create a better atmosphere than a CRA under the circumstances that we're looking at out there?
Not in this scenario, because the TIF doesn't serve for Shanks. The TIF that was created serves for that purpose, for the improvements that were made for the infrastructure and the road. But any of the businesses out there besides the road aren't benefiting from that. So for in this instance, this is the only incentive that can be offered, which is the CRA. You know, and granted now this has come up that it's in a TIF, but from what we've all learned is that can be put on top of this TIF.
But his property does fall within the TIF.
Correct.
There's just nothing that we can partner and offer that would help enough to make the TIF worthwhile. Is that the way I'm seeing this then?
The TIF and the CRA, to me, are the same but completely different.
Oh, yes.
You're both recouping.
Got a lot of research on that.
You're recouping the tax dollars, or you're redirecting those tax dollars. The CRA, you're
the
redirecting
TIF.
the TAF, in both. The
In
CRA, you're
the CRA,
redirecting the
they're
half
being
tax dollars
redirected back into the
to the
business.
business, and the TIF,
Which
you're
is-
redirecting those tax dollars to support infrastructure.
Which
The
is
debt for
too big,
infrastructure.
which is a big difference. Because
Completely, yeah.
a smaller development would probably much rather have the money put back into its own business
Oh,
than
absolutely.
to pay all of its taxes, because they didn't even have the investment in the infrastructure that we are trying to fund.
Correct.
Correct.
Do you think the TIF hinders development then in that area? Because of that?
No. Exhibit 1 is loves.
Well, I guess it was almost
Without-
created for Love specifically, what it sounds like.
But if we didn't have the TIF, we wouldn't have love.
Well, we would have had to struggle to find $1.1 million to build a road, you're right.
Right.
We would have had to fund it in a different way.
Completely different way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know that would have been impossible, but you were
This
looking.
was the easiest
Pretty
path
close.
to do that.
It's always a lot easier to loan yourself money, and then you can pay back at your,
Right.
you know. It's a lot easier to pay yourself back than just pay somebody else back, is what I should say.
If I do understand it correctly, the payment that is coming due will be covered by LUFs for the most part.
I haven't heard that yet, so I was kind of hoping to get that answer tonight. There has been money
So
collected on
there's
the TIF.
been enough money, supposedly there's been enough money collected that the TIF payment that will be due upcoming will be covered. It's gonna be close.
Some odd $1,000 is, or has already been collected.
No, will be collected by the time before that debt payment is made in 2029.
If nothing else falls into the TIF, it will be collected.
That's what you thought, right?
That's what I thought.
That's exactly the way I understand it, and I'm not gonna speak for Kevin, but his concern is that it's very thin, that we are just making that payment, but get back to if the value of that property decreases, taxes that are recouped for the debt service will be lower,
Yes.
Right.
In which case, we wouldn't have enough money to support that.
Right. Now, after, the CRA is for 10 years. After the CRA expires, and if the property then is valued in excess of 500,000, then those dollars then would go towards the TIF, correct?
Correct. You're still going to
Okay.
capture 20 years of that.
So the CRA will come first,
Correct.
regardless of what happens.
Yes.
Not at the same time,
Right.
and then the TIF will come in afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, it accomplished its goal, the CRA, by putting 10 years' worth of money back into the business. to help it
Correct. Yeah, you're supporting both then
Support it up.
essentially. Yeah.
With the same amount of money.
And hopefully then that also triggers more development, that in this 10 years that the CRA is running, we have more businesses come into that area
So
that
the
would
last
essentially
question
feed
that
in.
I have then is, would you see that without this, with this TIF, did it artificially then, or not artificially, did it promote the reduction of the size of the expansion that he was looking at?
No, not at all. No.
However, the CRA is going to put money back in, which is part of
Correct.
his calculation
Correct.
as to whether he can make the expansion or not.
Yes.
I've got all my questions answered. Thank you very much.
Great questions, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Anybody else?
You know, we've talked about this a lot, and, you know, when you focus in on this little patch, and it looks like, well, it's just 11 jobs, but it's also a sign of what are we doing to help local businesses grow? And that's something that we want to make sure we're continuing to promote across all of Napoleon, is we want businesses to grow. And if you want your local people to grow, that sends really strong messages to people that are considering the spec building or some other places in town already that may be empty or may be coming empty at some point of, if they're not just taking care of the new people in, they're also taking care of people that are already here. So when you start to expand it out and take a larger view of kind of what we're trying to do, and I look around, and I know Andy was mayor for a long time, and Chad's been here a long time, but economic development, it's a bunch of dominoes all lined up. And once you push the first one, it becomes easier and easier and easier. But once you stop, it is really hard to get the dominoes all set back up and to push the first one down. And so I encourage us to do this. I agree with what Councilman Barrett has said about doing 3 reads. I got no problem with that. I appreciate what Bob was saying there with all his great questions. We're doing the research we need to do. At the same time, I still remain fully supportive of this because of what it's sending the signal to the rest of Napoleon, the rest of, the 4-county area. I think recently in the last 30 days, Defiance has mentioned two larger projects that they're going forward with. And if we say, we're not so sure about this, what are we saying to other people that want to, grow right here in Napoleon? Are we going to say the same thing to them? And they're all case by case, understand that, right? They're all unique circumstances. At the same time, you have somebody that's been growing his business and needs a little help to continue to grow his business. And in my 9 to 5 line of work, past performance is not indicative of future. I understand that. The same thing with him. He's had a CRA and he's knocked it out of the park. And so this is 11 jobs. I think hopefully we'll get more than 11 out of it. And then if you get 11 more families in town, you need more houses and another reason to build more houses, and it just kind of builds and builds and builds. So I'm going to be quiet now because I've said way too much.
Well, I think you said a lot that needs to be said. I have one more comment, though, to make. I didn't see a problem with this before, but there was an awful lot of concern. I don't see that concern right now. I don't seem to see it. There is money that's coming in. There's probably going to be enough, and if there isn't, it's not going to be a huge mountain to overcome. My concern is that if we wait longer, if we do, what's going to change in 2 more readings? That's my concern. That's my question.
Yeah.
Why don't we move this along? Why don't we let this project move on? Why don't we approve it for the 10 years? And what's going to change between now and 2 more reads in 30 days? And that's all I'm going to say about that.
I will say too, I understand the concern in wanting to take it for 2 more reads. I will have to amend the agreement, as his start date for construction was going to be July if we push this out, which we certainly can do, but just then expect an amendment to come forward then with you guys.
Thank you for the questions, Bobby. That was really good stuff, and Jason for your comments. I agree. I think the CRA is something that we should do for the business, not only to help them expand, but to retain a valuable asset to the community. I spoke with Jen earlier today, and I think our priority needs to be how else are we going to grow that TIF district and attracting other businesses to that area, whether that's forming a committee or whatever, but this is the first step to that puzzle. I think Kevin brought up great points, and that's his role, right?
Exactly right.
The finance director is here to provide checks and balances. So I think it's a polarizing enough issue where we should take the time to do 3 reads on it. I've asked 10 people their opinions, and I had 60% give me one answer and the other 40% give me a different answer. So I think it's something that we should take our time with, allow any people from the community to come forward and voice their concerns. Like Kevin be here and maybe give updated statistics on his side. But at this point, I am in favor. I'm going to vote yes tonight, but I think we need to do our due diligence and give this 3 reads.
Well, as it was mentioned earlier, for him to be eligible for the CRA, he would have to create 11 jobs. And that's 11 jobs minimum. Anything extra that comes along would be benefit, I would hope. Something like that would happen for him and also for us. And it makes it a little more, if some of these things happen and if he does grow a little more than his 11 jobs, it would definitely be worth it. So,
One other point I'll add is these CRA agreements are something that we review every year. Two members from council sit on that committee, and we go over how they're performing and then make a recommendation to council to continue the CRA or to not to. So Jen does a great job at help tracking that progress of the business. So those 11 jobs, we're gonna have snapshots of how they're progressing through that. So just a extra little 2 cents.
Yeah, and in terms of that, I mean, Jade and April Shank are phenomenal business people. They run 4 businesses out of that area that they currently own and have started from scratch. And at 4+, because I know they contract people out as well. But I think we as a body must continue to remember to keep that, we're open for business sign out.
Yeah.
Because it is important to send that message. Because it's very easy to go the other way, and then all of a sudden, people talk. And anyway, I do appreciate council taking a good look at this, but I certainly encourage you to pass this.
For too long, we've had, Napoleon has been noted as a place not to do business, and it's time that that's changed.
I agree.
Been fighting that for 8 years, Ken.
I think it has changed. I think there's been improvement.
But it's, we're on the downhill, but we're can quickly slip back the other way, so.
There's
And
ice
these-
on the hill.
Yeah, exactly.
And these incentives, they're very competitive, so I know that there's been talk about, can we offer a lower year, lower percentage rate? Well, he can go somewhere else and get 10-year, 100% real quick, So that's just another aspect that this is competitive nature these days. We got to keep him here.
All the more reason why I said I didn't think we should be dragging our feet too long. If we're not bringing a new and good discussion on this, I think we're holding things up.
Mhm.
And I'll just stop with that.
All right.
Call the question.
Any other discussion or questions? If not, is there a motion for suspension?
Motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Rox, please call the roll.
On suspension.
On suspension.
Dan,
No.
Molly,
No.
Bob,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ross.
No. All right. Any other discussion or questions on the legislation? I'm hearing none. Rox, please call the roll.
Dan,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes. All right.
Just make sure I understand this. The suspension vote was 3-3, right?
Correct.
So do not pass for lack of majority. Am I thinking that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure that gets noted the right way. If I'm saying that right, or if
Thank
I'm
you.
jacking this up, so. But, the reality of it is, we have 20 days in this next council meeting, so in 20 days, maybe we can make instead of going to the full 3, maybe we just get done in 2. That might be the thing to do, so.
What Kevin.
Yep. So,
Jen, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you for your question.
Thanks for being sporty enough to, Micah, and that kind of stuff for us, so thanks.
All right, we will move on to item I, second reading of ordinances and resolutions. There are none this evening. Item J, third readings of ordinances and resolutions. There's also 0 tonight. We will move on to item K, good of the city. Item K1, discussion or action, review and approve of the power supply cost adjustment factor for July 2023 SPSCAF 3-month average factor 0.01501, and JV2 0.028054. Andy?
Yes, Councilman Durham. This month's power supply cost adjustment factor is actually the lowest that we've had in 9 months. And it's a full penny lower than it was a year ago. I don't know why it was so high a year ago, because it was pretty high. But part of the reason this one is so low is there's $384,000 in credits that we received from the sale of RECs for JV5, which is the hydroelectric plant down at Belleville that we are a part owner of. And when you produce more energy than you use, you can sell those clean energy credits. And we did that, and because of that, we received $384,407 in RECs for that sale. So that's a big part of why I believe that the factor's so low this month.
We'll take it.
Absolutely.
Lowest in 9 months, that's great. Can we have
Just-
please?
Just a side question, how long is the wind generator at Bowling Green going to be in operation?
I believe only another year or two. Only 3 of the 4 are currently in
Right.
operation.
One
but
killed an eagle,
Is that right?
yes.
I don't follow news. Sorry, Jen.
That wasn't reported in the Signal anyways.
That's right. Yeah, I believe it's just another year or possibly 2. That's a very, very small part of our portfolio.
I understand that.
It's like 0.2%.
It's a good thing looks don't kill, because we could do a city manager tomorrow if they did. Genuinely killed you.
I do read the Signal every single day. I do. Other than that,
Can we have a motion to approve the power supply cost adjustment factor?
Motion,
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Dan,
yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes. All right, item K2, discussion or action approval to apply for Ohio Public Works Commission funding for fiscal year 2024. We are just making a motion to direct the law director to draft legislation. Chad, you want to take this one, or Andy?
sure.
This is the legislation we bring forth every summer. The OPWC application will be due in early September. This legislation will allow the city manager to sign all the documents required for the application and acceptance of the grant funding. Right now, we are considering tackling the East Washington Street sanitary sewer. It is one of the projects required through both the long-term control plan as well as our current MPDES permit. We are going to have to do this project in several phases because of the cost. But if we can receive some grant funding through the state to offset those costs, that makes sense to me. So we're just asking for the legislation to be drafted so that the city manager can sign those documents when we submit them in September.
Perfect. Thank you, Chad. Any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to draft the law director to draft legislation, please?
I'll motion.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Dan,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes. All right, item K3, discussion or action approval for municipal court to apply for the CCA 2.0 and tech grants. Andy, do you want to take that one, or?
I will just say I like to get as informed as I can about these things, but I like to also invite those that can speak to it much better than I. So I've invited Judge Schuler this evening to speak to these 2 grants.
Welcome, Judge. Thanks for coming.
Sure, no problem. As you may or may not know, the city, the tech grant, I've been here before, we've talked about the security out of the municipal court. And we applied for a security and tech grant, lots of things that I was hoping that they would pay for. But the two things that the grant is going to pay for is the metal detector and the x-ray machine. So that is the tech grant part of it. Those two things is the only thing we can use that money for. I believe the money's already here, separate fund already. So we have received those funds for that. The CCA 2.0 grant, in the past, the city has to provide a probation officer for the court. And I'm doing my research. The court has gotten a grant to pay for those since dating back to about 1996. So there was two grants, the CCA, the original one, and what we call the J-RIG grant. Two separate grants that we always applied for to pay for probation officers, things of that nature. Now they've lumped it into one, and it's called the CCA 2.0. So we want to keep doing what we've been doing here since 1996, which is calling it a different name.
Okay, perfect.
And that's kind of what we're doing.
All right.
So if you have questions, I'll be sure to answer any of those questions.
Hopefully, Your Honor, they're giving you the same amount or more money for that grant?
They're giving us the same. We've applied for a little bit more. They've not made any promises. We cover raises, we cover all of our educational needs, anything that our probation officers need, computers, vests. I mean, that pretty much comes out of that fund right there. We're doing well, like I said. It's just instead of applying for two separate grants, we have to go one grant now. So.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
you may not know the answer to this, Judge, but the tech grant, you said the money is probably already here.
Mm-hmm.
But I know getting stuff has become a difficult task.
And it's ordered, and we have to have, the part of the grant says that we have to have it installed by June of 2024.
Okay.
So it's already on order. We're just.
So we got a year to receive it then?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
Great question. Any other questions or comments? If not, can we have a motion for approval?
Motion approved.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Dan,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to item L and around the table. Councilman Bear, you had first vote tonight, so I'm going to bring it your way first.
Oh, wonderful. Actually, I don't have a lot. Mr. City Manager, do we have anything for Safety and Human Resources here next week?
We do not.
Mr. President Pro Tem, do we have anything for that committee?
No, sir.
Okay, well then I will cancel that meeting for next Monday. And other than that, at the minute, unless I think of something else, I will ask for a recount or something.
You're always welcome to a mulligan.
Okay, but that's all I have.
Molly?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Durham. First off, I want to commend our crews for their activity in the last couple of weeks. It's been kind of a crazy time in terms of water loss and electrical outages, but our crews, Brian's crews out at operations, Greg's crews at the electric department, and Jeff's crews at the water treatment plant, having to make up for lost water, have really gone over and above to perform. We did find the leak. The leak was actually found by one of our electrical linemen, but as I've passed along, it was located out along Independence Drive. We have some sewer work that we're digging into or tearing into tomorrow morning to make an attempt to fix that sanitary sewer that was damaged, or I'm sorry, the storm sewer that was damaged. And then once we get that done, we will move forward with insurance to get that taken care of. In addition to that, we had scheduled Aqualine to come in to help us find locate the leak. Just by chance, we found it the day before they were scheduled to come in, but we did not cancel that. We made the decision to move forward with having them check some locations that we had suspected. They found one minor leak out on Jerome Drive that we were able to fix right away, which didn't amount to much. But more importantly, we had them look at the 16-inch crossing under the river, because it got to the point over the 11 days that it became more and more suspect as being, because we couldn't find it. It was not surfacing anywhere. And we had them check that, and that came back as good. So fortunately, we don't have an issue there. They checked 3 or 4 other locations in town too, but came up with nothing at those locations, so that's good. But
That was a good call, bringing him in still.
yeah, we decided pretty quickly on Tuesday, when we were standing out around digging the hole, that we would still keep them coming in, because they're very, very hard to get. It took us 8 or 9 days just to get them here, and we thought it was going to be longer. But anyway, and I don't know if I relayed it to you or not, but the holes in the water line were adjacent to the storm sewer, and the storm sewer got ripped up as well. So the water was able to go right into it and flow into Oberhaus Creek.
Okay.
And it was in an area where we never saw it. So as much traipsing as we did around this community over 11 days, it was, I'm glad we found it. So,
Sleep a little easier at night now.
yes, I sleep. I sleep some, yes. But that's all I had.
All right, thank you. Dr. Cordes?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Mr. Hayes?
Just back to the 4th of July, the fireworks was exceptional
Thank you.
compared to what around the area. We had a really fine show.
Yeah. Tony is his biggest critic. And I think other than Tony, every single person, or I know other than Tony, every single person I talked to said they loved it. So, but Tony's being his,
My wife saw a show in Illinois the week before that was about $45,000 show that was no better.
wow, that's good. Good to hear.
I saw a lot of positive comments on our show, so job well done. Anything else, Mr.
No,
Hayes?
sir.
Tammy, I apologize, I skipped right over you. Anything for the law department?
No, thank you.
Nothing for me tonight, Mr. Mayor?
I want to add executive session. I know that we don't usually use our phones in session, but I got to make sure I quote this. Executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee. So it'd be just council members, please.
We
Other
also,
than that, that's all I had.
perfect, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
We also have another executive session request to consider compensation of a public employee. I'm just gonna ask for a motion on the executive session that Mr. Mayor called.
I'll motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And we'll vote on these together. Can also have a motion to go into executive session for compensation of public employee.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, will you call the roll for both of those, please?
Dan?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes. All right, just counsel for both?
No, let's do.
We're good there, Andy?
Good.
May I have a motion to come out of executive session for compensation of a public employee and also for,
To consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee.
So moved.
Second.
thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Dan?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes. no action taken for either of those two items. We'll move on to item M, approve payment of bills and financial reports. I actually did have a question on one of those pages, Andy. I think it's on page 9 of the bills. There was just like a roadside mowing service fee. And I was curious as to which roads those were for.
Northwest Landscape.
I think so. I think it was at
Yes.
the bottom of page 9, if you have those.
Northwest Landscape.
Page 10.
Page 10, top of page 10.
Page 10, top of page 10.
Is your finance, is the financials even in there, in your packet?
They are, somewhere.
Shows you the dollar.
What was it, like 28, 27?
$2,700.
What was that item cost, Ken?
Hmm?
How much was that line item?
2643.75.
What was your question, Ron?
Do you know which roads that is for?
There's a whole list of roads that they cover. Yeah. I have a sheet, probably 3 or 4 pages
Oh,
of
really?
areas in the city that they cover.
Okay.
Yeah.
The who, Northwest Landscape? who
That's
it was?
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Can I get that list at some point?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are they going, question? Are they going to be mowing what the state does not mow inside the city limits?
They mow everything they're contracted to mow.
'Cause there's-
I guess I'm not sure.
Like where the state has taken out the limited access, or the limited access fences on the intersections in the city. They're also, the state is not mowing, like in front of the old Holiday Inn, which is gonna be a construction area anyhow.
Right.
But they are also taking the fences out on all of their, anywhere along 24, limited access fences on intersections. Because they're not gonna mow anymore, which makes that big intersection out by our church, by St. Paul's Church, that big intersection is not being mowed,
The entire interchange, Cloverleaf.
all of that.
I know a portion of those were added into the contract. I don't know if all of them were. And I know that some of the fences, if we want them removed, they'll remove them. But if we don't want them removed, they're willing to let them stay. But ODOT hasn't told me if they're getting all of them out of St. Paul's. They're planning to take them out on 108.
Yeah,
But I don't know about St. Paul's. I would have to ask Pat,
Macaulay.
Ward.
Macaulay.
No, it's Parcher,
Oh.
not Parcher, Pat Dilly. Pat Dilly.
Oh, okay.
But I believe the ones on Scott Street were added into the contract this year, but I don't know if the ones on Woodlawn are. Tony runs that contract
Okay.
with Cotter. But we can find out.
Do you know, Andy, is that a monthly cost, or is that?
They have an annual contract.
Okay. Makes me feel a little better about that.
Yeah. They have an annual contract.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for the bills? All right, in the absence of any objections or corrections, the payment of bills and financial reports shall stand approved. Item N, adjournment. May we have a motion, please?
motion?
Thank you. Fox, please call the roll.
Dan?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes, we are.